understand culturally. It might be a touchy subject, but at the end of the day, it is one of those inevitables, the issues of estate planning, wealth transfer, and a legacy. And we look forward to our panelists and speakers giving their thoughts on this topic. So without further ado, I'd like to now welcome Mr. Yemi Sadiq, the CEO of Coronation Trustees, to deliver some opening remarks as we get things started and to, of course, set the tone for today's engagement. It's over to you, Yemi.
Thank you very much, Wally. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for joining us. My name is Yemi Sadiq, Managing Director of Coronation Trustees Limited. It's a true pleasure to welcome you to our webinar today, themed Securing the Future Strategic Estate Planning for Wealth and Legacy. At Coronation Trustees, our mission is very simple but powerful. And what is this mission? Is to help individuals and businesses secure their future through thoughtful estate planning and the trusted support that you can get from any estate planning firm. We understand that preserving wealth is more than just your assets. It's about ensuring that there's a legacy that withstands, the uncertainties of time. As you know, the only uncertain thing about life is that life itself is uncertain. So our role is really to be your partner in that journey through life, providing clarity, confidence, and peace of mind through the different phases that you will encounter. Now, today's session brings together a lineup of remarkable professionals who share in this our mission. We have gathered experts across the fields of estate planning, wealth management, legacy preservation. These people are going to guide us through the complexities of safeguarding your wealth and securing your legacy. So whether you're just a beginner in estate planning, or you're just looking to fine-tune your estate planning strategy, today's discussion will give you practical insights and effective tools for long-term security. I'd like to extend a special recognition to our keynote speaker for today, Mrs. Olufunke Olumide, the managing partner at the Legacy House Multifamily Office. Thank you very much, madam. Olufunke brings a wealth of knowledge in family office management and legacy planning, and we're very thrilled to have her, share insights. We have other esteemed panelists and experts. One of them is Adebukola Oyinei, who is a partner at Wigwe and Partners. She brings a wealth of experience and a deep understanding of trusts, estate planning, and Nigerian legal landscape in general. We also have Ms. Oluwapelumi Adewale, who is our own very trusted advisor, an expert at Coronation Trustees Limited. She provides personalized solutions for clients seeking to protect and grow their assets as well. And last but not least, to give an international flavor or an international perspective to our discussion today is Mr. Jason Green. Mr. Jason Green is the Director of Private Wealth and Advisory at Appleby. He's going to be offering his perspectives on international trust structure and, wealth preservation strategy. And as you've heard before, our distinguished moderator for today is Wale Famirewa, who is a renowned journalist and anchor, with CNBC. And Wale would lead our panel today through what promises to be an enlightening and engaging conversation. So you can tell that there's a whole lot of experts around with us today. And to our attendees that has taken out time, we thank you for taking out time to be here. And we encourage you to engage, ask questions, and actively participate. This session is designed with you in mind, and we hope that you will leave here with a clearer understanding of estate planning essentials, from wills to trusts to wealth preservation to succession strategy. And before we go as well, I would like to acknowledge the entire Coronation Trustees team and our partners for their dedication in organizing this webinar. Your hard work makes all of this possible, and I'm deeply, deeply grateful for that. So thank you, everyone. And here's to a rewarding and insightful session ahead. And I hope everyone will be able to take away something from this webinar today. So over to you, Wale Famirewa. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Yemi, for setting the tone for us. And we look forward to, as you mentioned, a very insightful session as we proceed. And without further ado, I'd like to now yield the stage to our keynote speaker. I'll offer a brief intro so that you better appreciate her background. She is none other than Olufunke Olumide, as Yemi rightly pointed out, a partner at Equity Partners and managing partner at Legacy House, where she guides African families and individuals through wealth preservation and legacy planning. With over a decade of advisory experience, she specializes in optimizing business structures across sectors, ensuring successful wealth transitions across generations. And she would be delivering a keynote presentation as we get things started today. I'll hand over now to Olufunke to deliver her presentation. It's over to you.
Thank you so much, Wale. Thank you, Yemi. The day has finally come. It's been some weeks coming, and with all the preps and all the calls, and I'm glad to be here. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm thoroughly thrilled to be here today to discuss on a topic that's very dear to my heart, and I would say also very crucial, very important for families in these times. Now, I know when you hear about estate planning, and I hope everyone can hear me, just so I know whether I need to increase my pitch or not. Can everybody hear me? If someone can just give me a thumbs up.
We can hear you clearly. Please go ahead.
Perfect. Okay, beautiful. So I know when we hear about estate planning, some people see it as a very dry legal topic, and sometimes it also connotes, oh, the end of the life. But I want to demystify that today and say that estate planning is not about the end. It is not, we're not looking at the dry parts. We're not looking at any too technical bits today. But I want to let you know that estate planning is about building the right structures, for your family today that would help you have a better future. Even for the now, you're able to reap the rewards if you start early. So we'll start off with what estate planning is not, what it is not. When we discuss with clients, sometimes we say estate planning and they think, oh, I already have a will. Estate planning is not a will. Estate planning is not just about your finances or your investments. Estate planning is not about tangible assets alone. It's not about just inheritance. And certainly it's not just for the affluent. I say it's not for the affluent because many times when we speak to clients, a lot of them say, oh, I'm not rich, or I don't have money, I don't have anything, I only have 2 properties. And I'm like, you're already building a portfolio there with your 2 properties. So how about you get on advisors to help you on that journey? So this is what estate planning is not. And so I'm hoping that, I'm taking off all the blurry lines, all the foggy, all the mirrors that you use to look at estate planning, and we can just remove the myths this morning so that we can truly focus and learn on what estate planning is. Now, estate planning is a holistic journey. It's a holistic journey where you can start at any time that you're convenient. Many times we say start early, and early is not at 50, definitely. Early is early. Some people start even before they get married, and it's fine. That's early enough. Some people start just as they get married, but because it's a journey, you don't want to start too late in your own life's journey. You want to start as early as possible. So estate planning is a holistic journey beyond wills, beyond the money in the bank, beyond your properties. It's a holistic journey. It's creating a living, evolving strategy that grows with your family. It has to grow with your family. So you cannot say, oh, I have an estate plan and that's it. And you do nothing for a year, you do nothing for 2 years. No, it has to evolve with your family. Your estate plan, when you started off as a family of 2, just you and your spouse, and when you have 2 kids, and when those kids are teenagers, the plans have to evolve with the family. And so that's what I want us to know today. So you're going to be hearing a lot of journey, process, evolve. Please bear with me because I'm trying to ensure that at the end of this webinar, we understand that estate planning is not boring. It's not about the end of your life. It's a journey. It's a process. And the earlier you start, the better for you. So the journey starts now, as I said. It starts now. As fast and as quick as you can get on the journey, please start. I know some of us have taken some baby steps on that journey. So you've engaged a lawyer. Fantastic. Or you've even engaged Coronation Trustees. Beautiful. Have you gone back to them 6 months after to say, oh, hey, based on what the engagement was, these are the new things that have happened in my life. Your estate plan have to always reflect what is happening, what is going on with you. It cannot just be a plan that you put, which is why I said it is not a will. It's not a document. It's not something you just put down. It's a journey. And, the journey begins now. Now, we're going to be looking at 3 pillars that I just identified for us to look at today. One will be the strategies for estate planning. Another would look at the intangibles like values, culture, vision, and then we look at asset protection and tax efficiency. Now, there's no point doing an estate plan if there's no estate at the end of the day. So you want to ensure that, your assets are protected. Now, wherever we are, you can just take a sip of coffee or take a drink as we start this journey. Now, the first bit will be securing wealth and legacy. And we're going to start with the intangibles, values, culture, and vision. Now, I want you to have a question at the back of your mind for this slide. What do you want your family to stand for in 50 years? You don't have to answer now because it's probably something you need to think deep about. And I find that, that's a struggle for many people. When we begin to touch on Wale mentioned it at the beginning where he said, today's topic may touch on some nerves in your body that you never really you don't want to go there. But we have to go there. What do you want your family to be known for or to stand for in 50 years? Legacy is more than money in the bank, as I said. It includes your family values, culture, and vision. Now, what are your family values? This is the core of what sustains your legacy. Your values, there are different values: integrity, resilience, empathy, different values, trust. What do you want people to say the Olarewaju Olumide family is known for in 50 years, or the Yemi Sadiq family is known for in 50 years? Are they a business owning family? Oh, in business, what sector have they honed on? Are they in the automobile space? If you think of Ford family, you already think of the Ford car that you're driving. If you think of Toyota, that it's a family that is behind that. That is sort of reflective. You'd find that is reflective in their estate plan. So what are your family values? The Rockefeller family, for example, have a strong value in social responsibility. So you find that their foundation is constantly given to stuff around education, around global health. There's another family, the Mars family, that make the Mars candy. They're very big on family unity. And so almost every member of the family is working in the business. Not all families have that. So you need to think through before you start your estate plan journey. And even if you started, it's not too late to, retract and just sit back and think around your family values. What do you want your family to be known for? In terms of culture, what's culture? Culture is the way of life of any society. Culture is your family's identity. What is your family's identity? If they saw an Olumide today or a Sadiq today, would they be able to identify you as that family? I'm sorry, Yemi, I'm going to be saying your surname a lot, so please get used to it.
It's fine by me.
Yeah. So for family culture, culture is the way of life. So what are the elements of culture? Language, food, dressing. What's the mentality in your home? How do you guys interact with money in your house? How is money seen in your home? Those are the things that you want to begin to itemize and document, so that even the next generation, you're already impressing it in their hearts, where you're saying, in this family, this is who we are. We say it in little issues where you say, oh, in this family, we don't lie. We say that we don't lie in this family. You say sometimes, you say, in this family, we get A's. I know that one is not very true, but that's what they told all of us. Every father told their children that in this family, we always come first. And even if, you never can really check your parents' record, can you? But, they say in this family, but those are the cultures, in that family, they probably they hold education very dear. And there are some families that is their culture. Education is their culture. You find that in the Carnegie family, they give more to libraries, they give to educational institutions. It is woven into their estate plan that whatever wealth we build, we will always support education. That's the family culture. And then vision. What's your family's vision? Again, back to our question. In 50 years, what are you hoping to achieve with your family? The family is the smallest unit of any society. So if your family is achieving a vision, imagine that hundreds of thousands of families have a clear vision. The world will be a better place. So what's your family's vision? And your vision has to have a broader impact. come on, it shouldn't be about your family. It shouldn't be that, oh, we want to be rich and okay, comfortable, and then you build a fortress around yourself. You will still drive to another part of town. So how about your vision impacts on society? Have some philanthropy, have some social impact, tied into your vision. So even if you're going to be a family that's in the business space, what would that business be giving back to the society? So let's have that, at the back of our minds. So the key takeaway from this first part is that true legacy is intangible. It's the principles that you pass down. They are just as important as your assets. And it's those principles that ensure that the assets stay intact. If you start your estate plan on this path, I assure you to a large extent that you will be on the right path. Because if you are able to itemize, and it will take a while. Trust me, we find clients that once we send them this question, they run away. They just switch off on us because they don't want to think. It requires a lot of introspection. It requires a lot of thinking, and you get vulnerable even with your own self. But these are things that you need to itemize early enough. What do we want to be known for? And then what values drive our family? What principles are clear in this family that we want to do? And then once you do that, we then move to the next part, which is creating the structures. Now, it is more than just a will. A will is a document that people still fight over in the courts after a few years. So it is more than a will. We're not talking about wills today at all. It's a holistic journey. It's the full plan. So it's an ongoing process that is living. Your estate plan is living. It's not dead. It's an adaptable strategy that evolves with your family. So one of the strategies I will always say, and it is a major tool. I call this tool a Swiss knife and a security blanket. And that's the tool called trust. Setting up a trust. I'm sure my people in Coronation agree with me. Setting up a trust, it is like the very core foundation of your estate plan. In your estate plan, set up a trust. What is a trust? A trust is a legal relationship, or you can even say a legal entity separate from you, where you appoint a trusted person. And you notice the word trust, where you appoint a trusted person, third party, to manage your assets for you and even for the next generation. So how about you do, I always say that on some things we engage advisors, on some other things we don't. When we get pregnant, we go for prenatal checks, we go for antenatal, we want a doctor. But when it comes to some other issues like your life, we're sort of very careful. We think we can download a template from Google to help us. I would say, please set up a trust. A trust does a number of things. It protects your assets from creditors because your trust is it has a different life of its own. It's not subject to your personal estate taxes. It's not subject to personal liabilities. If you were sued today, they can't touch the assets in your trust if you have moved them to that trust. It is just you. With your trust, you can control, even in your lifetime. And that's why I say it's not a will. You can control in your lifetime how you want it to be managed. You can set up, governance policies, which is the next thing we're talking about, on how you want the assets there to be managed. And then you can also pass wealth easily, smoothly to the next generation with a trust. Now, to family, three strategies: trust, family governance policy, and succession. Three things called the family governance policies do, and then future proof, which is succession. So for family governance policy,
Oli, can you still hear? Can you still hear Olufunke?
I can't seem to hear you. I think her shot
Okay, I
may
think
have frozen
internet.
up.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we'll probably just give her a second and see if she comes back on.
Yes, most likely it's an internet connection issue. And let's just give her a few minutes. Hopefully she can reconnect with us. Okay, I do see her. She's coming back up now.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah,
Would I say Nigeria happened
it's
or
okay.
internet? Yes, I'll just
It can
get
happen
back,
anywhere. No problem.
honestly. Yes. I think the last thing I
Yeah,
was
we
talking about
lost you
was on.
about 2 minutes ago, about a minute plus in terms of when we actually lost your audio.
Okay,
So
so
please, you can just
was I
reiterate
on
for me.
family governance? Was I on family governance or trust? Family governance, I
I,
think.
I
Family
think you were
governance.
on this slide where we family governance. Okay.
Family governance, I
All
said
right.
establish your family constitution, your family charter, letters of wishes, establish these things that they are able to set clear terms and clear measures for how family members even interact with the assets in the trust. It is clear. Everybody knows. So for especially for those who have businesses, family businesses, you're able to own the business. Doesn't necessarily mean that you would participate in the management of the business. They are different. We all own it. Doesn't mean that you would be the next CEO. It doesn't exactly move to the second born or to the first born. So some of those things should be stated and will be stated in your family governance policies. Now, in terms of future proofing, succession planning. Now, succession plan is another thing that is not an event. You don't just wake up and say, it's time. It is a process. It is a plan that you have to put in place because there's also going to be a transition phase in terms of succession planning. Now, succession planning for a family and even for those that have a family business. For a family, at some point, when do you want to start asking your kids for their opinion? Let's not be like I think they're called the baby boomers, the generation before the millennials who still see us as children and don't necessarily pick our brains for they just feel like there's some things that you should not even be involved in. So things like, do you want to eat rice or beans? They can ask you. But when it comes to the family's wealth or assets, they never really ask you. You don't even know how many lands your parents have. You don't even know so many things, even at 40 something, you're panicking because sometimes you can't even raise will. Let's even start from the basic one, will or trust with parents, because they didn't even involve you from the beginning. So that's something that we need to correct in our estate plan. Have a clear succession plan. If you have a family business, at what point do they come in? When do they come in? Where do they come in? I would usually say that involve them early, from when they are 10, when they are 8. Bring them in. If you have a family business, let them come in for internship. Let them have a day out with you at work. Let them see, oh, this is the business that they always hear in the house, and this is what we do. They don't necessarily have to study that course, but at least they have an ownership mindset towards the business, and it helps, with succession. So the key takeaway here is that estate planning is not a one size fits all. Now, I know everybody seems to be running to Dubai, Mauritius to set up their trust because they just feel like, oh, in Nigeria, nothing can work. Don't have a head mentality to estate planning. Don't just run out because your situation is peculiar to your family. Where are your assets? What do you want to do with your trust? These are some of the questions that when you answer them, then you know the right place to put them. So also choose your advisor early. Your lawyer, your finance person, your family office. I would usually say that the family, and I'm hoping that Yemi will not throw something at me, but the family office is is like a central hub for all these advisors. But even start small, engage a trustee firm, engage an accountant, engage a tax person. You need tax, and we'll talk about that later in the slides. So when you get these advisors on board, they are able to help you distill issues, the different principles and all that you have written down, and then set up the right structure that suits your family, tailor-made. There is no general estate plan. It has to suit your family. So now we're moving to asset protection and tax efficiency. And I just put it here that keep wealth where it belongs. Keep it where it belongs. There's no point, and I said earlier that there's no point having an estate plan when there's no estate anymore. And the reason why we're doing all of these things is that at some point you want to chill. At some point you want to be on a boat cruise at 60 something. You want to be playing golf. You want to see your money working. You want to see, and we're all going to live long by God's grace, where you see the third generation interact with the wealth that you built. But if there are no measures to protect the asset, then there'll be nothing left. We also need to break that myth where it's said that in Africa, our family businesses, and this is for those that have family businesses, don't exceed the third generation. Thankfully, I saw one last year, GB Tannery. The fourth generation, I think the third generation is in, the fourth generation is getting ready to come in. And I was so impressed because they're about 100 years old in Kano here in Nigeria. We don't talk about the really good ones, but we need to get to the point where we're constantly thinking of multi-generational wealth. It shouldn't stop at your generation. It should move, to different generations. So for asset protection, I would say there are different threats: creditors, tax. Tax should not be a threat, but you know how it is. Creditors, legal battles, unfortunate deals. Now you can get into a deal that is great at the beginning, and somewhere along the line, it becomes an unfortunate deal. Imagine if you went in as yourself, but if you had a trust that had some assets, at least you have something to fall back on, and all of that won't just go in that deal. So asset protection is very important. There are different structures that can be used: the family treasury, family investment companies, the trust, different structures. But if you get on board on time, you're able to mitigate some of these risks, some of these liabilities that could have come to you if you set up the structures on time. And then for tax efficiency, I need to say that there is no tax evasion. You shouldn't evade tax. We should all pay taxes. Ideally, our taxes should be used for our roads and hospitals and all those things, ideally, in an ideal world. So let's not try to, because some clients come to you and say, how will I not pay tax? There's no answer to that. It is how to minimize the estate tax. We minimize the taxes. We ensure that you're not taxed in Mauritius, Nigeria, Dubai, everywhere. We minimize the taxes. And it's based off the structures that are created that we're able to minimize those taxes. I'm wrapping up. So the key takeaway here is protecting wealth is as much about prevention as it is about planning. You have to ensure that the wealth stays in the family. And I'm not talking about it in the way that you're not impacting the society. No, it's that the wealth is not dissipated. It's that the wealth does not go into the hands of the predators. It stays within the family, and it will require foresight and the right advice. Get your tax guys on board from the beginning. They studied tax to help you. So get them on board. Some people are so afraid to get tax. They think that getting tax people is just for businesses. It's not for individuals. But trust me, you need tax advisors from the get-go. They are even able to scrutinize what your lawyers are structuring for you and tell you, oh, this can work. Because, hey, some people have assets in the US and in the UK. And don't just see it as, oh, I have assets abroad, everything is fine. No, the US rules on tax, very different, very strong. And in other parts of the world, it's different as well. So you want to know, what is that? Do we have tax treaties? Where am I going to be? Where is double taxation going to happen? You want to answer all those questions at the beginning. So get the right advisors. Now, this is almost like my favorite part of the presentation, and I'm wrapping up. Preparing the next generation. In your estate plan, you have to consider the next gen. And this is something that my husband and partner always say. He says, get their buy-in early. Now, the next generation are very different from ours. In fact, we're already interacting with some of them, Gen Z. And there's even another generation after them, I think they're called the Gen Alphas or so. I got an email yesterday from my daughter's school, who is in year 2, saying that her structured tests, what we call continuous assessment, will now be computer-based. And I thought to myself, so I was already getting used to her assignments on the laptop. Now the tests will be computer-based. If my daughter in year 2 is doing computer-based tests, my son in preschool, by the time he's in year 2, would he know how to hold a pencil or a biro? Now, that's a fear that, a mom was still telling me recently that I'm not sure if the babies would ever get to use their pincer grip, to hold a biro, because they are swiping from the get. From 18 months, 12 months, we give them a tablet, they are swiping. That's the generation that we're passing wealth to. So we need to consider the dynamics there. We need to consider AI. We need to get on board with that. We need to ensure that our estate plan includes education and mentorship and leadership development. You want to, I have a client who has reached out to say her kids will be around December to first week in January, and we need to hook them up with financial literacy. And they're getting ready. That's because they have 2 family businesses and they need to get them ready early. You need to get them used to money. There's this article I wrote recently that how early do you start talking to your kids about money? The earlier, the better. Let them get used to, let them not see money, let them not hear 10 million naira and be shaking. No, you don't want to, you want to imbibe in them that, oh, money is money. It's a tool. It's not that thing that makes me excited. It's a tool. So you want to imbibe the right values in them very early. You want to send them on leadership courses very early. They are the future of your legacy. It depends solely on how you train them. That way, everything that you've built will not just go down the drain. I mean, for the Christians, you know about the prodigal son and how he just took his wealth and he just went down the drain. But you want to be able to instill some things in them so that they know how to navigate life and navigate. You know, we talk about trust fund babies. Many times when people talk about trust fund babies, it's not in a good way. It's always in a bad light of, oh, that's a trust. It's, in fact, it's with a smirk on your face. That's a trust fund baby. It's almost like, oh, I wish I was a trust fund baby, but yeah, that's a trust fund baby. And this is how they are behaving. We need to correct that. Let's have trust fund babies that are models. Let's have trust fund babies that are innovators. But it would only work where you are intentional about their development. You're intentional about the things that you pass to them. Now, in conclusion, once again, estate planning is a journey. It is not a destination. It is not an event. And when you start now, you get to enjoy the benefits long before the next generation. You see your wealth work for you. See it work for you even now. Be able to go on a boat cruise at 40. Why wait till 60? Because you are still in that hustle mode. You know, start early. The needs for your estate planning journey would be ongoing advice, the right structure, foresight, regular updates. You need to constantly update your estate plan, you know, and have the right team. The team that works for family A may not necessarily work for your family because of the dynamics, but get the right team, get people on board on time. Now, your legacy is not just what you leave behind again, it is what you build every day. So start today. And I hope that you enjoyed this presentation. God bless you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Olufunke. Very, very insightful presentation there. And I have no doubt that there are many questions that will be posed as a result of what you've shared. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and insights. All right, so we are now going to segue into a panel conversation. And I'm going to start that by introducing our panelists, and then we'll get right into it. So our first panelist that I'll be introducing is joining us from very far away. Jason Green is Director of Private Wealth at Appleby Global Services, as mentioned earlier by Yemi. He advises ultra high net worth individuals and family offices on structuring cross-border investments. With extensive experience in insurance law and wealth management, he also supports the administration of multifaceted global portfolios. Jason, it's a pleasure to have you join us today.
Thank you very much, Wale. I wanted to pick up, and good afternoon to everyone who's joined. Thanks, of course, to Yemi Sadiq and the team at Coronation who've allowed us to participate in today's webinar. Right. I really wanted to pick up
Jason, I apologize for interjecting. If you don't mind, can I just introduce all the panelists and then we'll get right into the conversations? I just need to do that real quick so that we stay on time. So I would please just hold your thought. We'll be having you share them shortly. All right, so I'll also now invite to join us on the panel, Adebukola Oyenei, an expert in corporate law at Coronation Trustees, focusing on estate planning, compliance, and M&A advisory. She brings extensive knowledge in capital markets and estate management, guiding clients on essential transactions and corporate structures. Adebukola, it's great to have you join us.
Thank you, Ole. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Yemi.
Good afternoon. Wale, minor correction. Adebukola is from Wigwe and Partners. She's from Wigwe and Partners, not Coronation. Yeah, thank you.
Oh dear.
I mean, we wouldn't mind having her on board. We wouldn't mind having her on board, but
good afternoon to all the panelists also.
Okay, my apologies for that. Very, very huge mistake I made there. I regret that. But as we go on now, I'd like to invite Oluwapelumi Adewale, currently serving as trust advisor at Coronation Trustees, and I'm sure I got that right this time. And she's leveraging her experience in customer relations to manage portfolios for private clients, corporates, and capital market entities. Specializes in trust structures and client-centered wealth solutions. So we look forward to hearing from Oluwapelumi. Oluwapelumi, it's a pleasure to have you join this panel.
Thank you so much, Wally. Thank you, everyone.
All right, so let's get right into it. Jason, I know you wanted to share some initial thoughts, so maybe I'll just allow you to open up with that. Please go ahead.
Yeah, apologies for not following the protocol, Wally. So just to thank Yemi Sadiq again and his team at Coronation for allowing me to participate today. I wanted to really start by picking up on one of the points that Olufunke made during her presentation, which is this concept of the foundation of what all of us as advisors are doing is really trying to protect and make sure that the families and the individuals we work with can benefit from having real generational wealth transfer. So her example of her family that's in the 4th generation now in Kano is how I wanted to start, because I think a critical part of that is, of course, recognizing, as Olufunke identified, the importance of working with advisors who know what they're doing, who have access to and knowledge and experience with the subject matter. And I just wanted to, on that same vein, introduce Appleby or reintroduce Appleby to those who aren't familiar with the name. Appleby started out as a Bermuda headquartered law firm back in 1897. So I had to use a calculator for this one. That's 127 years ago. And Appleby has been advising high net worth individuals, international corporates for a significant period of time. In respect of today's specific subject matter, those of you who follow international offshore law firms in particular would know that we have offices here in Bermuda, where we're headquartered, also in the Cayman Islands, Mauritius, Seychelles, Jersey, Guernsey, Isle of Man, Hong Kong, also now in mainland China, and of course the British Virgin Islands. And to give an idea of the size and scale of our fiduciary business, our trust business, our private wealth business, and our history and our expertise, and I invite people to fact check this. In 2016, Appleby sold its fiduciary arm, which to a European-based private equity group called Bridgepoint Partners, who then rebranded it to from Appleby to Estera. And that was then sold for a transaction rumored to be over £700 million to what is now Ocorion. So many people would know the name Ocorion if you know the history. And it's interesting when people talk about generational wealth and generational families, but if you talk about generational advisors, what is now the Ocorion platform internationally was the Appleby business. So this is the second iteration, as it were, for the past 5-6 years of Appleby's global wealth and fiduciary business. I really wanted to start there, growing on the law firm and building on the law firm's 127-year history, working in all the jurisdictions I mentioned, advising, representing international families and clients from all over the world. I just wanted to kind of start there to familiarize or re-familiarize people who either don't know the name or are familiar with the name and really needed to re-engage in terms of who we are. I just wanted to start there, Wally.
Well, thank you. Thank you. No doubt. Advisors, and I think even Olufunke pointed this out, advisors play a very critical role in this whole process. But let us begin by just getting some high-level perspective on the theme. I'll come back to you, Olufunke, just to piggyback on some of the points that you've made during your presentation. And I guess my first question to you will be, at a very high level and very practical level as well, how can families strategically preserve and grow wealth through well-designed estate planning? I mean, you've mentioned the various tools like trusts, but maybe you can, in a very practical way, just describe at a high level what people can do to both preserve and grow their wealth. Because like everything in life, if you're not intentional, whatever result you get is you just have to live with it.
Okay, thank you so much, Wale. Practically, which I'm sure I've mentioned already, would be to, one, start early. Another thing I'll say is engage advisors at the beginning. They are in the best position to give you the right structures for your family. And maybe we shouldn't, I'm trying not to use the word structure so people don't think that it's so deep. It can be deep, but it can also be as fluid as possible, based off what you need as a family. So first you need to even know, what do you need? Why, what do you need as a family? At this point, do you want to just set up an education trust solely for your kids, just to fund their education? Or do you want to set up a fuller one that caters to your needs as a family, and then for the kids as well? So you need to identify your needs, get your advisors on board, and then they can then advise you on the right structures for you. Of course, we would always say set up a trust, but even at that, get your advisors first, and then they would be able to give you the practical steps for your family.
Thank you for that. Okay, I'll still come back to you. And again, I just want to encourage our audience that we see your questions being typed in. We are going to come to them shortly, and please keep them coming. All right, let me go to Oluwapelumi now. Let's talk specifically about wills. What fundamental elements do you think need to be included in a will that will help to ensure the intended legacy is preserved, especially in the context of Nigeria? Because as is the case with everything, the rules of engagement tend to be different depending on your locality. So can you just speak to that for us?
Okay, thanks so much, Wale, for that question. So considering Nigeria, I think it's essential for you to know what elements should be included for your will to ensure that your will is honored and it's not rendered invalid. So number one, there should be a declaration of intention. So what this means is that it should be a statement that is stating that this is your last will and testament. It should also state that you're of a sound mind. And one other thing to also include, there must be an executor to that will. So this is the person that is going to ensure that all your wishes are stated in your will are being carried out. And you should clearly state who your beneficiaries to would be. It should be included in this document. There should also be a detailed and specific asset distribution. So you must be really specific. So we must not leave room for ambiguity in this. And then for beneficiaries that are under 18, it is important to appoint a legal guardian for them. Yes, and also there should be witnesses and there should be signature. Most times we advise on each page, there should be the signature of the testator, that is the person who is writing the will, or who writes the will. And then the witnesses also cannot be beneficiaries. It's important to note that. So your witness cannot be a beneficiary. So you must have at least 2 witnesses and they must be adults, that is above 18 years of age. And then the date of the will must also be included. So these are just some of the elements that should be included in your will to ensure that it is honored and not rendered invalid.
All right. And it seems like everything you've described, no doubt one has to engage a lawyer to do this. But then, as the case is for a lot of people, we tend to want to run away from paying bills if we can avoid them. So can you just speak to this point about how critical it is to work with a lawyer? And if to the extent possible, you can speak to maybe demystify the cost of that process.
Okay, personally, if you would ask me, I would think a will is, it's it's relatively easy to set up. And that is why you would also need the services of a lawyer, your solicitor, or a trust advisor. This is why you need them, because they will guide you. So there's some sentences, some clauses that may not be clear. So you need them to guide you, to explain, okay, this is how this should be written. And there are some instances where you need to include a residual clause. There are some instances where you are merging a trust with a will. You need to do a pour over will. So these are, and depending on the type of assets, you're also bringing into you're also including in your will. So when you have a trust advisor or a legal advisor, they're able to guide you step by step. And even when you have a life change, perhaps maybe divorce, the birth of a child, you acquire new property, you need a trust advisor or your lawyers to guide you step by step. So they ensure that, yes, your wishes are truly honored, and there are no loose ends while you are trying to tidy up your retirement estate.
Thank you for that. And we're going to stick with the topic of wills for a bit more as I move now to Adebokola. And again, my sincere apologies for the misstep earlier in terms of your title. It's certainly Wigwe and Partners. All right, so let us talk a bit about efficiency here when it comes to wills. What strategies can we help to reduce probate delays in the Nigerian context and relieve stress on the beneficiaries? Because, that's the thing about wills. When they're executed, the person that wrote them is not here to clarify when and what they want. So can you just speak to that? You are muted.
Apologies
Okay,
for
go
that.
ahead.
Yes. Thank you, Wale. So I would like to start based on the question about mitigating delays, probate delays in the Nigerian legal terrain. Identifying some of these delays include bureaucracies, need for kickbacks at the registry, lots of we have procedural steps to take, and also where there's no clear information about if either you have the recurrent will or there's still some other wills in existence. So now, in order to mitigate probate delays, we usually advise, based on the existing estate planning tools available, to adopt that which will be less stressful for the beneficiaries. And one of this is creating a trust. So now we all know that a trust is like an instrument also too, an estate planning tool that you put in place for your beneficiaries, and appointing a trustee, to set up some strategies, either to protect your assets or your legacies, and also how you want to assign them to the intended beneficiaries. So the first thing you need to also take into another thing you need to take into consideration is that for you to appoint a trustee, you need to know how efficient they are and how diligent they would be in addressing and carrying out your directives. So let me start by identifying what a trust is. A trust is a fiduciary arrangement and a relationship between three persons, which is the trustee, the settlor, and the beneficiaries. The beneficiaries are the ones the assets, all the benefits are drawn to or are assigned to. Now, as I said earlier, mitigating delays. One of it will be that the test. Let me use the for trust now, since we're creating a trust. I would say this settlor has the honors to ensure that all his information are well outlined. His intention is also identified in order for the trustee to guide on what type of trust to create. Take, for instance, now, as Olufunke said earlier, you might want to create an educational trust where you still have some minors and you have some monies in the bank just lying idle. You can invest such money into the trust and inject it into the trust rather, and direct the trustees to actually use such funds and some permitted investments that will yield profits.
Right.
Yeah. And in that case, that will yield profit. And in that case, those monies are assigned, those interest or profits from that investment are assigned to the intended beneficiaries. So
Right.
by creating a trust, you already know that this aspect for my minor children or for my family members, in the case of maybe continuous financial needs, or maybe you have a disabled person in the family and there's a need for funds to be available for their care. Now, when you have such in place, when you have such tool in place, you already know when the inevitable happens, like your death, your
Right.
beneficiaries, your dependents are also.
Oh, you are muted again.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so in place enables you to have a rest of mind, knowing that your dependents are taken care of and their needs are met. So,
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. So you've highlighted the trust. So in a way, you've taken us from will back to the subject of a trust. And I'm going to really just go there now and maybe coming back to Funke before I go to you, Jason. The Nigerian situation. People talk about the peculiarities of it. When Adebukola was speaking now, she even highlighted something that could be a huge challenge. When you're going through the authorities to finalize the will, there could be challenges with people asking for kickbacks for you to even finalize things. So in that context, the context of the Nigeria situation, my theory is that trust is the way to go as early as possible. Do you agree? And let's now talk practically. How do we go to a trust as soon as possible? Just given the fact that we already have assets, and now we want to organize ourselves such that we want to manage transition, but at the same time, still to the extent that we can use those assets efficiently now. So very briefly, if you can, before I go to Jason.
Yes, thank you, Wally. So yes, and I'm glad that we're all landing on trust, because really that's where we should land right now, considering the authorities and all the drama with the probate registry. So yes, set up a trust. A trust can take different formats. I found that in Dubai, their structure for trust is a bit different, even from what we have here in Nigeria, but somehow find the structure that works for you. So it's not just the relationship that you're creating. There are other legs to it. In setting up a trust, you can either set up a trust you can set up a trust entity as well, which can be a foundation. You can set up a trust entity as an LLC, whatever structure you require for your needs, your advisors will let you know, but you can set up a trust. It's as easy as I don't want to say I want to get married, but it's as easy as I want to engage a lawyer. engage your lawyer and just say, I want to set up a trust. And of course, it takes weeks or days to set up. It's not as complicated as it may sound. It's really easy. Yeah. You're muted, Wale.
I apologize. So we're back to the issue of trust and moving forward with that. Let's now go to Jason real quick. Jason, let's take this international now, because you bring that perspective to this conversation. How can international trusts be used to manage cross-border assets effectively?
Okay,
Because,
sure.
Go ahead. I'll just end it there and have you speak to that.
Yeah, sure. So let's start out by the offshore platforms and the jurisdictions that we operate from, Wally, everyone, allow and don't have, they are tax neutral for the purposes of this conversation. Yeah. So when you set a structure up, it doesn't have to be a trust. It can be a foundation, can be a private trust company, can be as simple as a company, an SPV. Many clients just have an SPV because at this stage, they're not prepared to give that full level of control to a third party, which we understand. And I think just really listening to Olufonke and everyone else who's participated and the work I do with Yemi, of course, and his team, really what we're talking about, Wale, and everyone, is having the courage to lead the conversation with the client. We know that when we're dealing with clients who are independently wealthy, their general perspective is, who are you to advise me on my wealth? Because, you know, I earned it, I'm successful. You're like someone in the bank. I used to be in the banks, where you're trying to get deposits, trying to get investments, and their view is, who are you to advise me? And I always go back to, and for those who can remember the date, I won't mention the event, but I'll mention the date, the 25th of February, 2023. By then, I think I was on my 15th conversation with someone and saying to them, listen, you know, at 465 to $1, this $5 million cash that you have, because the client had exited a certain investment, of course, I said to him, it's time for you to take a decision, and you can put a simple company structure together. You can be the director. It's offshore, doesn't pay any tax. You can do a basic set of investments, either individual securities like Apple, Google, Exxon, Shell, whatever you want to do, or you can do a deposit, something really basic, even introduce a client to a very good investment advisor, where that client would have had an 8% return on a 5 million US dollar portfolio. So I'll go back to that. An 8% return on a $5 million portfolio. That's $400,000 tax-free. The cost of the company was like less than $6,000 a year at the time. So no trust, really uncomplicated. The client would have been a director. Between December leading up to that election on the 25th of February last year, I know I called the client like 15 times. Today, we know the number's not 465 to $1. It's now 1,720, 1,740. You know what the client says to me today? He says, yes, you called me 15 times, but you should have called me the 16th time, right? So these are the same clients who, it's very difficult sometimes to have clients buy into recommendations, buy into structuring. And I would say that for all of us who are in this very privileged role as lawyers, as advisors, the key is to really just keep the conversation going and giving your clients as much information as possible so that they recognize that some form of structuring, no matter how basic it may be, is a phenomenal start to then moving to the more complex areas that Olufonke, others, the team at Coronation, teams at Appleby can provide. So we really have an obligation to kind of impose ourselves and force that conversation, so at least our clients are thinking. And we start small. We start with a company in a tax neutral jurisdiction, and potentially, if you want to take it a step further, you make sure that investments, as it were, are structured in such a way to satisfy and service fees. Yeah, because when you're working with clients who have an exchange rate risk continually that they're looking at, they're always looking at the cost of offshore. How much is this going to cost? What's my exposure going to be each year? Yeah, I think I've gone a bit further than the question you asked, so I'll stop there.
Well, thank you. You certainly open our eyes to tax-free, potentially tax-free investing, and I'm sure that's valuable to many of our to the listening audience here. But I want to come back to Oluwapelumi, and just looking at some of the commentary in the Q&A field. Someone has pointed out that perhaps some of the questions have not been answered well enough in terms of the practical level. So I guess my next question to you would be, I'm coming to you, Oluwapelumi, now. Break it down for us, because Coronation obviously is a trustee company. And not everyone on this call is an HNI or ultra HNI. But I think we've already clarified that in the Nigerian context particularly, the earlier you can move into a trust, the better. The headache is so much less when you have organized yourself into a trust. So perhaps very briefly, if you can, speak to the process of setting up a trust for an individual and potentially the cost implications. So we better appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you, Wally. Everyone, thank you also, Jason. Yes, so in Nigeria, as we've also mentioned earlier, it's important to start now. So you do not have to be a UHNI or an HNI before you could, set up a simple trust structure. So what we usually advise is, let's have this discussion first. Let's understand what your objective is. So as Coronation, number one, we have these conversations with you. We understand what your objectives are. What are your long-term plans? What are your short-term plans? And then we're able to structure something that suits your needs. So that's what we do. And also the best time to start is now, because we understand that this is a journey, just as Olufunke had mentioned. So it's not an end, it's a beautiful beginning. And depending on what kind of asset class you're bringing in, if it's just cash, if you're bringing in some real estate, property, so what's the mix of what you're bringing in, and the structure, is it for a long term, is it for a child education? So whatever is that mix, so it informs our decision on, okay, what's the pricing? So it's not something, it's not cutthroat, it's not something that is going to affect maybe the costing and thereabout. So it's a play of those two factors. So what assets are you bringing in? What are your long-term goals? And then be able to structure something around that. So you could always have a conversation with any one of us, and we understand what journey individuals are in their wealth growth and accumulation. So we're able to understand with you and help you in starting on this process.
Yeah. No, no doubt. I see your hand, Olufunke, and I'll come to you in a second. So no doubt everything is situational, the situation of the individual, but it will still be useful if you can provide some specifics. So maybe I can give you a scenario. Let's imagine I have 20 million naira in some assets. I want to make sure that, I organize it in such that I can transit those assets to someone else benefit, even if I pass on. What would be the cost implication of that? Practically, how long will it take? Just give us a few scenarios.
Okay, so for that, with as low as 500,000 being the sign-on fee naira, you can set up a structure around that, because majorly most of your assets will be liquid, so they are cash. So with that, and then there's also the annual trustee fee, which is just a percentage on the ROI. Yes.
Got you. Thank you for that. At least to give someone an idea of where we're talking about here. Okay, so Olufunke, your hand was up. Please go ahead.
Yes. So I just glanced through some questions and I just wanted to give like a unified answer to some questions I saw.
Sure.
I see that some people have said that, oh, they already have an SPV that they have used to purchase properties. I see some people have also said that, oh, they just want to set up something for the kids. If you already have an SPV that is holding some assets for you, you're on track. That SPV can serve as your trust. That SPV, especially if you can still be the directors or the shareholders of that SPV. That SPV can serve as your trust. That SPV, remember that we said that trust is the relationship. That SPV, because it's a different legal entity, can serve as your trust, can serve as it can become a wide-scale single family office over time, where you then engage, advisors into that SPV that are now serving just your family. So with that SPV, you are on track. For those who want to set up for the kids alone, you can just set up something small where your money in the bank, you're putting some percentage you're giving it to the trustees to invest for you, as as Adebukola had mentioned, to invest for you for the purpose of paying the education bills of your kids. So many times, some people already have an idea. They've already set up a company, you are on track. I see that some people say, okay, shut it down. Should they break? No, you don't need to do that. Just get an advisor and then they'll be able to tell you how to link it, what other structure you need. So you can either have a company as your trust structure, you can have a foundation as your trust structure, you can have any kind of entity that works with your family.
Right. Thank you for that. I like the point that you've really highlighted something that's practical that people are already doing. So using SPVs to acquire assets, be it real estate or whatnot. But Adebukola, I'm coming back to you. And Jason, I am not leaving you out. I'm coming back to you as well. But on this issue about separate legal entity and asset protection, I want Adebukola to speak to how important that is in the Nigerian context and what are the benefits of that. I know, for example, that quite often when people want to buy real estate, they are advised to simply buy it in the companies, incorporate a company, which will be the vehicle to purchase that. That has a way of reducing your headaches down the line, especially when you want to do any type of transfer. But can you just speak to one, the value of the importance of, or should I say the significance of the acquisition of assets as under a corporate entity, being a separate legal entity, and then also speak to the issue of protecting your assets. What's the smart thinking around that in the Nigeria context?
Thank you, Wale. So, given the scenario you just made now, acquiring assets through a company, that's also a strategy or a structure for estate planning, and we refer to it as corporatization. You can acquire, like what was noted in the Q&A section about people saying they already have an SPV. So an individual can actually register an SPV and acquire a property under that SPV. But however, take note that there is this belief that you're creating an estate plan for the purpose of mitigating some liabilities such as tax and not totally exonerating yourself from them. So now, if you're saying you want to set up an SPV to acquire assets, you just don't set up any SPV. So you set up SPVs that you know that they have tax exempts, such as incorporated trustees, limited by guarantees, and the likes. So under such entities, you know that when you acquire an asset through them, you're limiting your tax liabilities. And because of structuring, you also need to take into consideration the input of the beneficiaries, the intended beneficiaries. Either you're including them as the shareholders, you understand, or directors in those structures also too. Sorry, can you remind me the second leg of your question again?
Asset protection.
So assets protection generally depends on what estate planning tool you also have. Like I said earlier, if you're putting your assets or you're structuring a nested plan and you're putting it on an incorporated trustee or a limited guarantee, you know that in a way you've put a succession plan in place that in the occurrence of the inevitable, this assets is still retained between the within the family and between the beneficiaries. Also, creating a trust also too, you have an asset management because you've already given the trustees the directive as to what to do with such assets. Either, you want them to dispose of it immediately. Take, for instance, like an artwork, you understand? And you know that, as a collector, you know the values of these assets. You can structure your trust instance to estimate the trustees on the value of those assets and why you don't want them to be disposed of immediately. Benefits from such can actually be assigned to beneficiaries without immediate disposal. I hope I've been able to address your question, Molly. Thank you.
Yeah, to some extent. And I'll even open this up to the other panelists. I see Yemi's hand is up, and so I know he wants to chime in. But when I bring up the issue of asset protection, essentially, I'm talking about things like liability, legal liability, that could impact the value of that asset that you potentially have tried to preserve for another person. Let's use, for example, litigation. If you purchased multiple properties in one on that one vehicle, if there is a legal liability that impacts one of those properties, it could influence the entire portfolio. However, if you broke that down into, say, 10 legal entities or companies, then obviously the liability is limited to those 10 companies. So that's really what I'm trying to get some perspective on. From your experience, and I'll open this up to the panel, what are some creative thoughts and creative approaches that we can have? Any thoughts on that? Yemi, I see your hand up. Maybe you want to speak.
All right. Can you hear me, please? I need to confirm you can hear me first.
Yes, clearly, loud and clear.
All right. Thank you very much. I couldn't resist the urge to join in the fun. Whilst I'm the host, sometimes it's nice to sort of share your perspective. So the first portion of what you said, and again, if I could just quickly say that somebody asked the question was an SPV. An SPV is a special purpose vehicle. It's a company, using layman's terms. Somebody has said we're not using layman's terms. So it's a company. Now, the first part of your question, which is how do you, I think the first part of your question related
Separate
for the
legal
protection.
entity. The second part
so
was
what's the
on
benefit
asset
of
protection,
creating?
but the first part was
Okay, so the first part was the
significance
benefits of
separate
using
legal entity.
So picture it this way, and I'm sure a lot of people on this call probably want to see how that works. Say, for instance, you want to buy a property. You want to buy number 1 Victoria Island, right? Number 1 Amodu Ojikutu Victoria Island. And you've incorporated a company called XYZ Limited. You can make your trustee the 100% shareholder of that particular entity, right? So instead of your trustee just acting as a trustee outside the SPV itself, they can be 100% shareholder of your SPV. I mean, you could be a shareholder as well if you want, but in order to let a corporate trustee take advantage of the protection elements under the law, a company can be a shareholder and a director of another entity. Now, this is the benefit. Say you were to transfer that property to your child or your children. If it were purchased without an SPV, you would have to pay new costs. You would have to pay transfer costs. You would have to pay the cost of moving that asset from one person to another. Now, with you moving that asset into trust, it's easier because you're only going to be paying once, which is you transferring that asset in your name to the SPV. Or if it were even to be easier for you, you can buy the assets in the name of the SPV. So say, for instance, you wanted to transfer it to your children. You can decide whenever, maybe your trust deed, by the way, a trust deed is the document that actually encapsulates the relationship between you and the trustee. So that is the document that shows that, look, even though this man is the shareholder on this particular SPV, I am the owner of this trust. I am the ultimate beneficial owner of this trust, and that is encapsulated in your trust deed. Now, going back to what I was saying, say, for instance, you wanted to transfer that number one Amodu Ojikutu to your son when he turns 18. In your trust deed, you must have clearly mentioned how you want the asset to be transferred. When he turns 18, all you just have to do is change the shareholder of XYZ Limited to your son's name. Then your son becomes the shareholder. As you know, the owners of a company, especially a private company, are the shareholders of that company. Now, once you do that, you avoid
I'm so
a
sorry. I'm so
number of...
sorry. I am sorry to jump in. On that last point, is it also
Yes.
possible in the trustee to simply say that that transfer should happen upon your demise? Or must it be
Oh,
dated?
yes. No,
Because
no, no.
that sounds to me like a very efficient way to transfer.
Yeah, I mean, you can have, so again, I'm sure my colleagues touched on, I think Olufunke mentioned it earlier. In a trust, you can have a trust called a living trust, right? As the name implies, it's a trust that exists when you're living. You know, you can be a beneficiary. Most times, the person setting up the trust is the primary beneficiary. But there's some irrevocable trust you can have as well, where you clearly state it in there that this trust is irrevocable. We have a number of them, existing, which means nobody can wake up one morning and say something else other than your intention. And that's where you have people like trust fund babies that Olufunke mentioned earlier. These are people that are benefiting from trust that has existed way before their own, existence at all, way before they were born. And using the example I gave earlier, if you can have an SPV as a structure, these people can become shareholders of the company. And that's why you would see a number of family businesses, you'll see a number of private businesses where at some point, certain members of the family become players within that particular entity. Maybe when they turn 18, or maybe something happens, they make them a director or make them a shareholder. So I wanted to address that SPV point. And then in terms of protection, you're right, Wally. Sometimes the structure you would use is dependent on your personal circumstances. However, what we as trust advisors do is that we tell you the different asset classes you can invest in. It could be that you have, let's just use very practical example. You have a 20 million naira. You have maybe 2 million out of it to buy equities, another 2 million fixed deposit, another 2 million money market instruments, maybe another 3 million you decide to invest in a real estate investment trust, different instruments. You can decide to use SPVs to hold these different assets. Now, whilst we know that there are legal requirements and there are reporting requirements for all of this, as long as you have nothing to hide, these are very legal structures that you can use. And again, the only uncertain thing about life is that life is uncertain. So there's no foolproof thing anywhere in the world. But when you use these structures to an extent, you are guaranteed that at least these structures will protect your assets. For instance, Olufunke mentioned earlier, if it's a subject of a litigation and you've created a trust already, this cannot form part of those things. If, for instance, there's a garnishee order as for the people that are not lawyers on this call, if you're owing or there's a particular judgment against you, the court can garnish your bank accounts, garnish assets that you own, and using the word garnish, it brings them together, it's garnishing them, and it puts them together in a particular bucket, and the creditors can take what they want from it. Now, where you've created a trust, no one even knows of the existence of a trust, especially a private trust. Nobody knows of its existence. Let's start from there. So it protects you. Creditors cannot just touch it without an extensive court order, or if by operation of law something happens. So you're very protected. And the reason I decided to chime in is I see our panelists, they're handling all the questions, and I like the way they're bringing trust. And somebody asked a question that, are you saying that trust is the best? So I figured so that they don't make they're not telling my panelists that they're saying what we've not really said. We're just saying that, look, a trust is
Yeah, I will
just
say it too.
one
I will
of
say it. Trust is the best. If they won't say,
we're not,
because you
you
see,
know,
the reason
mm,
well, in the Nigerian context, because
yes.
when the issue of transfer begins, that's when people begin to appreciate the value of
Oh,
a trust.
yes. Oh, yes.
Makes
Oh,
life so
yes.
much easier, so much more efficient. So to me, the way I see it, if you are acquiring assets, be it
Yeah.
property, equity, whatever it is, I
Yeah.
think part of that acquisition cost should be setting up a trust,
Oh, yes,
because
I agree.
it will
And
help you
yeah,
further down the line to
of
mitigate these
course.
challenges with transfer.
So
That's
someone in the comments was saying something about in the question was saying something about how expensive it is, and it goes back to what you were saying as well. Your cost, I mean, the cost of setting up might seem a lot at the beginning, but it's something that mitigates against you having to spend so much later in the future when you're transferring. Picture this: you having to transfer an asset into somebody else's name is more expensive than you just changing somebody's name as a director and somebody's name as a shareholder in the company's records. So these
absolutely.
things matter as well. And apologies to my panelists, I just wanted to chime in.
No, no, no.
I didn't want you to have
I
all the
think
fun.
this is for the benefit of everyone, especially those who are joining. And we'll be coming
Exactly.
more specifically to the questions in the chat very shortly. But I want to go now to Jason. Maybe you can share your insights on integrating global asset protection with family wealth preservation. What can you share on that point? Jason? Okay, go ahead, Jason.
Following on, thanks, Wally, from Yemi's points around structuring, I think everyone on the call and your guests recognize the importance of recognizing you have to have some kind of structure and involving professionals at the point you're about to actually acquire the asset. That is the time, because of course you will have transactional costs if you try to restructure and change the legal title of an asset from your name to the name of a trust, an SPV, a foundation, whatever it may be. So just starting with basic concepts, we have to keep the discipline to just encourage our clients to involve us as they're making these decisions. If there's one thing that we'd really love everyone to come away from today's webinar with, please call your advisor. There's no cost. No one's charging you, sending you a bill for just having a conversation to give you some level of guidance as you're making these decisions. Because I think when you have, and I think Olufonke really set the scene, once you start to manage assets, manage wealth, build yourself, and have some level of financial success, even as an employee at a company, your share options and your bonuses, you have to start having that conversation with someone. To your specific point about international structuring, I'd like to distinguish between, of course, assets that are based in Nigeria, which everyone at the various teams, Coronation, Olufonke's team, those assets are, of course, always best structured through entities where you're getting local advice, because, of course, Nigeria has its own very nuanced tax and legal system. However, where the offshore piece comes in now is twofold. A, you do have clients who have, for example, private trust companies. A private trust company, just to kind of give you the 2-minute elevator version, is instead of having a licensed trustee act as trustee of a family's wealth, a family or a group can set up their own private trust company just to manage their own assets. So let's just call it I'm going to call it the Sadiq private trust company. You set up the Sadiq Private Trust Company here in Bermuda, in Mauritius, in the Cayman Islands. And the objects of the Sadiq Private Trust Company is only to act as trustee of trusts related to Yemi's family members, yeah, or employees in his team. And that trust company, that private trust company, Sadiq Private Trust Company, or call it for short, Sadiq PTC, can act only for those groups of trust, which could be 15, 20. And the flexibility this provides is the client can elect to sit as a director on the board of that private trust company. So when you start talking about control, the client's involved. The client may have an investment advisor at Coronation or another financial group. He wants his own investment advisor to sit on the board of his own private trust company, yeah, or his accountant or his CPA, the person he really relies on with all of his financial decisions. We know that most clients will have someone who they rely on heavily. In addition to coming to you for advice, we should be bringing that trusted advisor into the conversation, having them part and potentially having a formal role, either as an advisor to the PTC or sitting on the board of the PTC. This gives clients a lot of comfort that the structure, as it were, is in good hands and is set up from day one for some level of continuity that us as professional advisors, we don't know about a family member in Kano or someone who's going to school in Dubai, but that trusted advisor will know. And that trusted advisor is able to guide us as things are changing within that family dynamic. I just want to also just take an opportunity to talk about this concept of fees because it was mentioned earlier. Offshore now, I think people who had structures, it wouldn't be polite for me to mention some of the names of the companies I've worked with in the past, but in the past, you had this thing called the annual responsibility fee. And then every time the client took up the phone or did something, there was an additional fee. And when you're looking at US dollar fees or sterling fees, if you have Channel Islands trustees, Isle of Man, wherever, you're obviously sensitive around buying dollars or buying sterling at 1740, right? So what we do here at Appleby is we sit with our clients, sit with our co-trustees. We act as co-trustees on some relationships with some families, acting with, for example, Coronation as an advisor formally in the structure or as a co-trustee, because that's what the family wants. Or the family wants a member of the Coronation team to sit on the board. And what we can do and what we're doing only now with our clients, particularly clients who have exchange rate risk, is offering fixed fees. So every time someone picks up the phone or wants to do a transaction based on their profile, they're not paying an additional fee. I just want to kind of throw that out there because I think oftentimes people and clients have this misconception that when you're talking about offshore or outside of Nigeria, there's a massive cost. That's not necessarily the case. I think what you're buying stability, you're paying for the benefit of using a tax-neutral platform that is multi-jurisdictional, can work very quickly and respond very quickly to any cross-border need you may have. And each client relationship is different. So there's no tariff. We don't charge, and I don't want to offend anyone.
Right.
We don't charge fees based on the value of assets. Yeah. It's based on the level of responsibility and the work you want us to do. And that's how we maintain very long relationships. So our clients, there are no surprises, Wally, with what we're doing.
Thank you very much for clarifying that point. Valuable indeed, and good to see that you're collaborating with Coronation trustees. All right, so we have quite a few questions in the Q&A field, and I want to go to that now for the next 15 or 20 minutes before we begin to wind things down. And I will start by going to you, Oluwapelumi. 2 quick questions to you. As you can imagine, there are quite a number of questions, and as we begin to go to them, I have no doubt that we're going to even have more. So I'll pose these two to you first. Someone is saying, I have a property development company. How can I transfer it to my children and the next generation down the line? And while you're answering that, I want you to also clarify, do Coronation Wealth and Asset Management engage in trust services, especially child trust? So child trust services, and then the whole point about transferring property. Real quick.
Okay, thank you, Wally. So for the real estate asset, that's your property. So if you are using a will, so it can be mentioned in your will. So that is one way. So you just have to just mention that this particular asset should be transferred to your beneficiary, and you must really be specific about the asset, the type of where it is, and the likes. And also, it's also important for a couple of maybe the title documents should be in the custody of the trustee also.
Right. And then what about child trust? Is that I imagine
Okay.
there's a service available, right?
Yes, the Child Education Trust, yes, it's a service that is available and offered by Coronation Trustee. And with that, so what we just understand is, okay, what term? So how long do you want this to be? Because there are specifics to maybe the number of children, your beneficiaries, and how long do you want the trust to be for, and what is going to be the lump sum, the amount that you are bringing in it. So these are the factors that we also consider. But since it's just going to maybe cash assets into this for the Child Education Trust, as I had mentioned earlier, with as low as 500,000, you can start this up.
Right. Thank you for that. Olufunke, I'm going to, before I go to other questions, I want you to speak to this point. And it may sound controversial, but with everything, I mean, we've seen what has happened with artificial intelligence. There's always advancements, technology and whatnot, and even practices relating to estate. Wouldn't you say that the usage of will is now old school? Shouldn't it be trusts all the way? Because especially in Nigerian context, or are there any benefits of still going the way of a will that maybe I'm missing out on? Because the efficiency that you gain from using a trust to me is so significant that I am struggling to see the value of still going the way of a will. I may be wrong, so you can just speak to this.
I see the way Yemi is laughing because it's like Wale wants to put Funke in hot soup. Anyway, so this is how I say to older clients, because we do have older clients who already have a will. And yes, some of them are setting up a trust now, but they don't want you to cancel their will. And many times I say that it's fine. You can have a will. I wouldn't, as a first point of call, say draft a will. But if you already have a will, it's fine. Sometimes that will is just a form of comfort for them to feel like they have
There's a
a
plan.
will. Yeah, there's a plan somewhere. You can still set up your trust structures and mention the will there. Many times, what you then may need to do is to open up that will to whoever your new trust advisors are, so that they see what you've documented there and mirror it in your trust deed, mirror it in the other structures that you're carrying on with, so that even if you still insist on having a will, you still can set up these other structures that are running while you're here, and ensuring that your assets are protected now, and ensuring that your wealth is being preserved, you're investing in the right places. So you can still have both. But we would usually say that just have a trust. So if at the beginning you don't have a will, set up a trust. If you already have a will, it's fine. We can mirror it in your trust deed and your other trust documents and still set up a trust structure for you. Okay. So that would be I wouldn't say one is better than the other.
I know you didn't use those words, but it seems like you agree with me that trust is the way to go. Okay. Maybe I should even get some more perspective on this point, because I think it's a very important point. Coronation Trustees obviously has set up this platform for us to discuss this issue, these issues, and they offer this service. So no doubt they will benefit from more people going the way of a trust. But I'm just, because we may just be caught in the past and say, look, will is what people do. But really, is that the way to go? So Adebukola, Yemi, I see your hand up, but let me hear Adebukola real quick if you can, so we can take more questions. What's your view on this, my controversial point? You're muted. Sorry, you're muted.
Apologies for that.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So I will agree with you to the extent that yes, now trust is the way to go. And as Funke pointed out, you can have, where there's a will in existence, you can have it integrated also into the trust. So sometimes the clients, we advise the client to also identify the assets he or she has. There are some assets that you may want to create a different strategy, estate planning strategy for. Take for instance, now you have a property you want to assign to someone specific, like a favorite, and such directive or distribution to such beneficiary can create disputes within the family. Immediately, you may want to adopt the plan of creating a deed of gifts as opposed to assigning or that's through a trust or through a will. But for some
So
assets,
very briefly, what is a deed of gift, so for the benefit of those listening?
a deed of gifts is also an estate planning tool you can also use where you have specific assets you want to assign or allocate to a beneficiary or a dependent. It's a legal instrument also, and it can be registered.
So in a sense, you're extracting that asset from whatever other structure you have,
exactly,
like
yes,
a
easy
will.
because it's an immediate
And
allocation.
legally, one can do that.
Yes, please. Yes,
Right.
you can create a deed of gifts legally. Yes.
Understood. Okay. Thank you for that. Yemi, you wanted to chime in real quick, and maybe
Yeah.
to
So I wouldn't
point.
100% agree with you.
Okay, please,
100%.
I'm happy to hear your thoughts.
And again, this is it. There are a number of things that you may not be able to do with a trust. And you're able to do them with a will. I'll give you a very easy example. Under the Pension Reforms Act, one of the ways you can transfer your retirement savings account balance without any issue whatsoever is by specifically mentioning it in your will. And again, there's a reason we didn't really go to that side of the conversation. People say, who's your next of kin? Your next of kin are different from your beneficiaries. So typically when somebody passes and a next of kin has been named, those people can go to the pension administrator to say, look, I have a letter of administration. I'm about to start the process of ensuring that this deceased RSA balance comes to us. But with a will, once you've mentioned their particular name, I want my RSA balance to go to Wale Famurewa. It is clear. My I mean, not like I really want that to happen, but I'm just saying. So you can clearly state it there. A will is not outdated in its total form. I think it's just the nature of the things that can now be done with a will. And again, whilst trust might not be only for the elitist, there's this perspective that it is only for the elite. And I mean, in order for us to actually stop that line of thinking, people will still have to do trusts. I'm sorry, people will still have to do wills. And what Coronation as trustee has done to simplify that is to make sure that everybody has access to creating a will. Whilst everybody might not have the 1 million, the 500,000 to start, with a lump sum to start a trust with, because it's always good to have a lump sum to start a trust with, or a specific asset that you're starting a trust with. A will, on the other hand, you can create a will as long as you have something that is worth of value. Coronation Trustees, for instance, has started this will called the Simple Will, where anybody, any human being that is 18 years and above of sound mind can just go to the Coronation Trustees portal and create a will for as low as 50,000 naira. And in that will, you can mention your bank account, you can mention your RSA. So we are trying to democratize estate planning. Whilst, yes, a trust is the ultimate, is the ultimate holy grail of estate planning. And Jason would agree, you can even go as far as international trusts, international foundation, all the structures. It is the holy grail. But there are people that still need access to the very, very basic of estate planning, which is the will. So which means even if you forget to do everything, at least when you pass on, there's something you've done that ensures that your wishes are, are taken care of. So that's why I said I'm going to somewhat agree with you. And I'm sure the lawyers on this call would also not agree with you because, it's an interesting part of legal practice.
Well,
Thank you.
I guess I brought that up because, there's evolution in everything. And so maybe many years ago, there was just that focus on wills, wills, wills. But more so with what's possible and the challenges that people face, especially in the Nigerian context with wills. I mean, I know what it will take to go through that, and make sure that you can transfer title. Even the time it takes is enough stress, not to talk about the cost. So thank you very much for clarifying that point. I think it was very useful. Oh, by the way, I should say that while you were speaking, somebody who is on the call just sent me a message saying, and I'll just quote him, said, "Another great webinar. Incidentally, I have no will. Maybe I will go through coronation." So I think it's a great point you just made there, and
Thank
hopefully
you for that person. Thank
more and
you.
more people will consider that. And it's so interesting that you've created a platform where one can just simply go online, do the paperwork, so to
Oh,
speak.
yes.
Much as
It's very
50,000,
simple. Just it's a
you can get it.
do-it-yourself will. Anybody can do it. Anybody can actually do it.
Great
You
stuff.
start the process online to finish the process online. And it's just 50,000 there,
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you for that. Okay, so I have so many more questions. Let's get to as many of them as possible before we close out. Okay, someone is asking, how will you know your trust will carry out your assigned request after your demise? What criteria do you use to ascertain the effectiveness of your trust? So I guess assurances that, look, we may have done all this paperwork. Jason, maybe you can speak very briefly, if you can, to that so I can take more questions.
Yes.
How strong uh, a vehicle is a trust to ensure that you do get done what you want?
Sure. So the work we do, this question comes up a lot because obviously there's a very large, it's a big step to transfer assets into a structure, and then it's another psychological step to give someone who's outside of Nigeria that ability and responsibility to assist you. One, we're regulated in all the jurisdictions where we work, so that's number one. And our regulation is very simple. If a client has a complaint, they send an email to the regulator and we get a call immediately. So I'd like to throw that out there. That's things don't go wrong, but I'd like to give clients that assurance. To the specific question that was raised, most clients will either, and it was mentioned, I think, by Olufunke or someone earlier, will have a letter of wishes, which we follow, or depending on what type of structure you have, you actually institutionalize what the client wants into the drafting. You may have a charter. Say, for example, you have a private trust company or a trust, you have a family charter or a governance charter, and the trustees must follow that. There's no exception. So even although it's a discretionary trust with discretionary beneficiaries where you don't distribute money to someone who has, let's say, a penchant for gambling or issues with alcohol, at the same time, there's a charter that we must follow that says this specific child, daughter, son, these assets must be transferred to them at a specific date. And this is our business. We collaborate with our clients and we follow what our clients ask us to implement relative to their situation. And again, here's where advisors come in. So the person who raised that question, I'm confident they would have some level of support or governance already. We use words like governance, but governance is as simple as your EA or your PA who sat with you for 20 years in your own private family office, your own construction company, your own property management business, who knows everything about how you've earned your wealth and understands your family dynamic. Maybe that person is someone who, after your demise, is also involved with making sure that acting as a conduit, as it were, separate and apart from the governance, letter of wishes, and let's just say precise direction of the settlor or the client that we have to administer anyway. So to answer the person's question, this is normal for us to carry out a client's wishes, and it's memorialized in whatever structure they decide to establish.
So you're regulated. I'm sure there are all kinds of legal protections that people can have, even when they're dealing with internationally on these issues. But let's come to Nigeria, because many will suggest Nigeria can be different. So let me hear real quick. How much assurance can I have that my
All right.
all right,
the first thing,
my plans are carried out as
I think the first thing, I mentioned it earlier, and I think I said it in the comments as well. First thing, you're executing a trust deed with the particular trust house. A trust deed is a legal and contractual document that shows that there's a particular relationship between you and this company, and you can actually go to court if anything goes wrong. Now, other than that, most trusts will have what we call a protector. Every single trust will have what we call a protector. This protector is usually an individual or individuals that you have named to stay in your stead. And these protectors have a number of powers and a number of things that they can do. These protectors will be there to ensure that the object or the objective of the trust is carried out. If, for instance, you've set up a trust for the education of your children and your trustee is not doing what you've told them to do, your protectors can step in, because that is why they are the protector of your letter of wishes that Jason mentioned, for instance. They are the protectors of your intention. Now, other than that, in our jurisdiction, you also need to ensure that you're dealing with a trustee that is regulated. Particularly, the person regulating trusteeship in Nigeria, sorry, the body, is the Securities and Exchange Commission. You also want to be sure that this particular trust house is registered with the Association of Corporate Trustees. Your legal practitioner is registered with an MBA. If it's in case of a will, you want to ensure that your legal practitioner is also, registered with the body of private trust practitioners, for instance, or the particular family office that's dealing with you have registered individuals there. You can even go as far as ensuring that the people in those different entities are what we call sponsored individuals, especially if it's a capital markets entity. And again, within our laws, there are private recourse to individuals that have entered into agreements with a trustee. For instance, there's the Trustees Investment Act that covers everything we do. There's the Securities and Exchange Commission rules that governs what we do. There's also the Investment and Securities Act, the ISA, where it gives you recourse to the Investment and Securities Tribunal. So particularly, it is important that whoever it is you're dealing with, ensure that they are regulated, ensure that they're registered, and ensure that they have the right expertise. Once that exists, then there is no way the trustees would not carry out your wishes. And in case that they do not, because things happen, in case that they do not, then you have the recourse to the law and all of the things that I've mentioned.
And
Thank
Yemi,
you very much.
if you allow me,
real quick, Jason, because we are running out of time. Real quick, please. Go ahead.
One thing I wanted to just add to Yemi's comment there on this concept of the role of a protector, very common. It's not uncommon for clients to allow the protector to actually remove a trustee, the power to remove and institute a new trustee. And also, I just want to, Femi's raised a very important point. It's common for clients to allow the trustee to be removed by the protector, and also for the protector in their absence to agree fees. Very important.
Gotcha. Thank you very much. So there's recourse, there's protection, and I hope that more and more people will consider a trust and see the value for what you're paying. Another quick question. How much assets do you need before you're setting up a trust? So perhaps we can clarify that as well. Anyone, maybe Adebukola or Yemi, you go ahead real quick, because we have so many more questions and I want to round up.
So you really just to start up a trust, you need a lump sum. A lump sum really is something as little as 500,000. You can start with that as a lump sum. We have what we call a private investment trust as well, where people that have as low as 200,000 can start a trust, and then you accumulate over a period. And then where there is no lump sum, you can try other things such as a will, You can try other things such as education trust. You can even try other things such as, monthly contribution until it becomes a lump sum that can then be invested on your behalf.
Got you. Thank you very much. All right. Another question: who selects the members of a trust, or is it an already existing body which you just approach? Just to clarify,
I think the person is making reference to incorporated trustee.
Yes.
That one is different. This one is you're using a trustee that exists already, a family office that exists already, a legal practitioner firm that exists already. So the question could have been who selects the protector. The protector is usually selected by the settlor, and the settlor is the person setting up a trust. However, if you want to set up a foundation, for instance, where you're going to need an incorporated trustee, the members is exclusively selected by the person setting it up, but a trustee can also act as a corporate trustee to your incorporated entity, such as your NGO, your foundation, and your endowment fund and the likes. And by the way, can I quickly mention, Wale, that for questions that we are unable to answer on this call,
yes,
please kindly send these questions to trustee, one word, trustee, TRUSTEE, at coronationt.com. That's trustee at coronationt.com. And I guarantee you that we would answer every single one of them. Over to you,
all right.
Wale, please.
Thank you very much. Another question relating to investment returns on a trust. Someone is asking, what's the average return on cash or invested in a trust, say educational trust? I guess we can't be too specific. Everything is situational, but maybe it's good to clarify. Is there any distinction in terms of the returns you get in a trust arrangement and the returns you get outside a trust arrangement? Who would like to speak to that real quick? Is there any difference?
Okay. I'll just speak to that quickly. So basically, it largely depends on what asset classes are being invested. So what makes up the portfolio of the trust. So for example, if we could have maybe investment in maybe money market instruments, fixed income instrument, it's going to be an average of what you have. So this is going to be the return that is being generated. So we tend to understand what are your expectations. So if you have maybe a particular maybe expectation, maybe you want maybe a 20% or a 15%. So we'll do a risk profile analysis for you to understand, okay, what sort of risk can you take? Because we must understand that the assets that are being placed in the trust, we must ensure they're invested in instruments that generate decent returns and they are low risk. So once we can have these conversations, yes, so then we can decide based on the assets in the portfolio that will now determine, okay, what returns will be generated, and at least if it's something that could beat inflation. So these are some of the conversations that we have. So we have clients who their risk profile is quite high, so we can have investment in equities in that. But clients will say, oh no, I just want this reserve, so we can do same investment in maybe money market instruments, credit bills, and the like. So these underlying instruments will determine what is going to be the return on what you have in your portfolio.
All right, thank you for that. I have a question here. Can I request for a tailor will service in line with Islamic law? Perhaps somebody on the Coronation team can speak to this.
Yes, you can. Yes, you can. You can. We offer Islamic law or Islamic trust services, which allows you create wills, creates trust within the principles of Sharia. We've participated in a number of Islamic finance structures as well. So we understand very much the requirements of Islamic wills, Islamic trusts, and generally Sharia-based instruments. So yes, we do.
Okay. One last one before I really want to appeal to our panelists to maybe begin to type in responses because of time. Someone is asking, can a trustee company go bust? And what will happen in that case? People are thinking about everything. They want to make sure that all their bases are covered. So, tell me.
I mean, yes, a trustee, anything can happen to anyone.
No, but what could potentially make that happen? Because I imagine that a trust is organized in a particular way. So how could it possibly be done?
well, maybe
Is it
what the person is
because of
saying
the
is,
investment?
can a trustee company itself?
Yes,
Any
that's what he's
company can
asking.
have an issue. Any company can have an issue.
But what will
Any
happen?
company
Because,
may
for
have an
example, I've
issue.
created that trustee vehicle to manage my assets, so to speak, and then it now has an
Yeah.
issue. What now happened to all my assets? I guess that's the
But the good thing is, all your assets are not usually classified as part of the assets of the trustee company. The assets of the trustee company is separate and distinct from the assets in which they keep, which is why we like to call them assets under trust. So usually when that happens, which I've never seen it happen, I'm not saying it cannot, but when that happens, those assets are separate and distinct from the assets that are owned by the trustee company themselves. So, I mean, the company is operating as a going concern. So, the assets of the company is always separate from that which they hold for clients. So, I think they're covered. Wale, if I may add quickly,
Sure.
please, if you're on this call, we would invite our attendees to kindly scan the barcode that you can see on their screen. I know a number of people have been asking us, how do I get started? If you scan this barcode, you're as good as getting started. You can it directs you straight to the trustees portal. So that's where you get to put up your username, your password, and the possibilities on that portal are endless. So I just thought I should mention that as well. Over to you, Wale.
Thank you very much. All right, so we have run out of time, so to speak. So I want to again appeal to our panelists. As much time as you have, please begin to type in responses to the questions we have not answered. Yemi has already shared an email address to which you can share your questions that haven't been addressed during this session. So I want to say again, thank you so much to our panelists for this interaction. Real quick now, I would like to yield to Adeleke Balogun, Head of Trust Services at Coronation Trustees, to deliver some closing remarks and vote of thanks. And then after that, I do have one of two more announcements for you all. So it's over to you, Adeleke.
Adeleke, you're muted.
Yes, you're muted. Please go ahead, unmute and go ahead, please.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Adeleke Balogun. As we bring this insightful discussion to a close, I want to extend my heartfelt appreciation to everyone who has joined us today. And a special thank you to our keynote speaker, Mrs. Olufunke. She has been fantastic. And our profound insight has been great. We've been able to learn a couple of new things. Then to our esteemed panelists, from Jason to Adebukola to Lua Pelumi, and our part-time panelist, my managing director, Yemi Sadiq. We thank you for your invaluable contributions, and your expertise has truly enriched our webinar today, and that shed light on critical aspects of trust and estate planning. Also, I would like to thank our moderator, Mr. Wale, for skillfully guiding our discussion, ensuring an engaging and productive section. And to all our attendees, we deeply appreciate your participation and insightful questions. Your engagement has made the discussion even more impactful and has highlighted your commitment to securing your future and legacy. And as a few takeaways from today's discussion, we've been able to discuss how strategic estate planning is vital for wealth preservation and protecting our legacies. And for every attendees that have various questions, and I would implore us all to go to send them their questions to our email address, trustee@coronationnt.com. We'll happily answer any and all questions you might have, and we can continue to further the discussion. And also, you can also visit our website for more resources and for including articles and podcasts that would further deepen your knowledge on our estate planning tools. And we thank you once again to all our guests and everybody who has contributed to making today a success. And we look forward to helping you build a lasting legacy. And as a final reminder, if our technical team can put up the QR code so that anybody that has not scanned the QR code can do that again. And it will take you to our Trustees portal where you can sign up and you can access our simple wheels, and you can get on board as a customer of Coronation Trustees. Thank you very much for coming, and we look forward to bringing on insightful sections like this as months and days go by. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you very much, Adelekun. Indeed, it has been very insightful. I do believe many people who have joined in have gained a lot. I hope that my pitch about the trust has fallen well with everyone. So please do your best to engage the Coronation team going forward. One last announcement before we close out. I just want to bring to your attention, the Coronation Group obviously has been doing a lot of thought leadership events, webinars. The next one you should look out for is actually holding next week on the 14th of November. It's themed Smart Investing, Leveraging Insurance Solutions for Wealth Accumulation. So please look out for information on that and how you can join. As you can see that the information is already put on the screen. Please scan the QR code now to register. All right, on that note, I want to say thank you again to everyone for being part of this. Thanks again to Coronation. Thanks to all the speakers. And we look forward to having you at the next event. Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.